This week's Torah portion is continuing in the book of Genesis, in the book of Bereshit. We're in the parsha called Vayishlach. Last week, Jacob is leaving the house of his uncle Lavan, and he's taking with him his wives, Rachel and Leah, and his concubines. He's taking them with him with all his children, all his wealth that he's amassed, and he's going back home. He's going back to his birthplace. Along the way, he's cognizant of the fact that he's going to meet up with his brother Esau. So Esau, as we remember, was angry and distressed and cried out when Jacob took his birthright and he took the blessing from their father Isaac. And Rebecca tells Jacob to leave and to run away and to go to her father's house Lavan and to live there. And he does that. He's there. And he's now coming back, and he sends out messengers. He sends out angels, or he sends out messengers to his brother Esau to appease him. He's worried that Esau is angry, and he's afraid, and he's distressed. And then he finds himself on this journey, on his way back, he finds himself alone. And I want to read what happens when he finds himself alone, because this is what I want to focus in on, because there's a lot to say in this week's Torah portion, but this is what I want to focus in on. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And when he perceived that he could not overcome him, he struck the socket of his hip. So Jacob's hip socket was dislocated as he wrestled with this man. And then he said, "Let me go." The man says, "Let me go, for dawn has broken." And Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What's your name?" And he said, "Jacob." He said, "No longer will you be said that your name is Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with the divine and with man and have overcome." And Jacob inquired, "What is your name?" And the angel says, "Why do you inquire of my name?" And he blessed him. And Jacob called the name of this place Peniel, for I have seen the divine face to face, yet my life was spared. The sun rose for him as he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. So that's what I want to focus in on. I want to focus in on this encounter that Jacob has with this man. Many of the commentators say that he has this encounter with an angel, and he's struggling with the angel. There's this image of Jacob and the angel in struggle, in combat. And he's alone. He's alone. He's not at home. And he's not with his wives and not with his children. He's alone. And I think that I want to focus in on this idea that we're alone, but we're actually never really alone. There's always God is with us. God has promised Jacob in the dream that we spoke about with the ladders, where he has a dream where there's a ladder with angels going up and down, and God appears to him and says, "I'll be with you. I'll always be with you." And here's Jacob. He's perceiving himself. He's stressed. He's distressed. He's anxious to meet his brother Esau. He thinks he wants to kill him, or maybe he'll come to kill Esau, which is also distressing and fearful for him. And he's alone. So in that place, in that existential place of loneliness and fear and distress, he struggles, he fights with this angel. And many different commentators speak about who this angel is. Many of them say that the angel represents the angel of Esau, that represents evil in the world, that there's a battle between the cosmic forces of good and evil. So we all know that we're descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that we come from those people, and they put down in the beginning of our Jewish peopleness, they put down into our spiritual DNA, they put down strengths for us to draw on. So Jacob, in this place of distress, in this place of being afraid, in this place of being alone or perceiving himself to be alone, he fights with this angel. And this angel could represent forces of evil outside of ourselves. It could also represent, say, many of the commentators say, the Sfas Emes, that we struggle with our own internal sense of self. We fight against the self-talk that's negative. Jacob, in his lifetime, wanted that bracha, that blessing that Esau was going to be given, because he was the firstborn. And as we know, he deceives his father, he gets that blessing. And there's a sense that Jacob wants to be Esau. He wants to be that firstborn. He wants to have that blessing. He wants to have that birthright. And perhaps what Jacob is doing when he's fighting with this man, he's fighting with his own internal negativity, his own jealousy to be someone else. And I want to point to put my finger on this point another minute or two, because I think that this is very relevant for our day, where we're looking perhaps on social media, we're looking on Facebook or whatever people are doing, Twitter, Instagram, and we're seeing what other people are doing, and there's a great jealousy that can be arisen inside of us, like, I want to be like that, or I want to be have many friends as that person, or I want to be as popular as that, or I want to reach this many people, or whatever it is that we need on some level to be at peace with ourselves and to understand this is who I am and I'm not that other person. And that's what Jacob needed to do when he was fighting with this sense of not wanting to be, or not wanting to acknowledge that he was good to be Jacob. He didn't have to be Esau. He could accomplish what he needed to accomplish in this world by being Jacob and being authentically himself without wanting and being jealous of Esau. And so perhaps we also need to do that. We also need to kind of get in touch with ourselves. Who am I? What am I good at? What can I bring into the world? And then later when Jacob meets up with Esau, he describes himself as having everything. He doesn't have plenty, which is the way Esau describes what he has. He has plenty. Jacob says, I have everything. I have everything I need to be me. I'm at peace. I'm shalom. I'm at shlemus. I have a wholeness. I know who I am. I know what I've shed this I want to be Esau part of me. I've shed the jealousy and the part of me that was engaged in deceit, and I want to become a new person. And at the end of this struggle with the angel, he asked the angel to bless him, and the angel blesses him that he should receive from God a new name, and the new name will be Yisrael, that you have struggled with the divine and with man, and you have overcome. You have struggled with the divine and man, and you have overcome. So here's Jacob setting down the spiritual DNA for the Jewish people. We're the descendants of that. We have the capacity to struggle. We are struggle. Our life is one of struggle. We struggle with God. Where's God in the world? How could God let this happen? How could this Holocaust happen? How could this pogrom happen? How could this pandemic happen? How can all this suffering happen? We struggle with that. We cry out to God. And at the same time, we have faith that God's with us, just like Jacob understood that when God stood over him in his dream and said, I'm with you, that he had the faith to know that God was with him, and he's struggling with the reality in front of him and the suffering that goes on in the world. And so Jacob is struggling. He's not just struggling with God and how can this happen in the world, God, and are you with me, God, which is enough in of itself. He's also struggling with his own internal sense of who he is and how he represents himself in the world. And he's also struggling with the external forces of evil. So obviously through Jewish history, we, the Jewish people, have been persecuted, have been suffered from anti-Semitism throughout all of our history, and that is something that it is in the world, and we have to learn how to struggle with that. But we don't give up. We keep going. We get up and we keep going because we know God's with us. We know we have a sense of tenacity and the capacity to keep moving. We don't give up. We have a sense of hope. We have a sense of a vision for a better future. And we have a sense that struggle is in the world. Struggle isn't something that will ever go away till the end of days. We have a vision of that, but in this world, it's a world of struggle. And the struggle itself is the journey. So the question is, how do we face the struggles that we go through? I'll be interviewing Dr. Eager on Sunday, and here's a woman who went through Auschwitz, and she went through hell, and yet she had the tenacity and the capacity to have hope for the future, that there will be a better future, that this isn't forever, that I can get up tomorrow and I can live tomorrow and I can be kind. She gives bread away. She sees the highest kindnesses in these camps in the midst of such degradation and such suffering. She sees the kindness of humanity, and that's what we're called upon to be. We're called upon to be kind in our suffering for the suffering that will come, and the suffering has meaning. It's not meaningless suffering. So at the end of this encounter with the man that represents the angel of Esau, represents evil, so we're going to fight and struggle against evil. We're going to create a place of goodness and love and kindness and light, and a place for God to exist in this world, which is our job. We have the struggle against what we perceive as the injustices of the world. God, where are you? How can this happen? So we're going to struggle against God. That's part of who we are as Jewish people. And we're going to struggle with our own inner negativities and the things that block us, and try to push those away and try to be the healthiest and the kindest and the best people that we could be. So we're going to struggle against all of that. And at the end of this struggle, Jacob says, bless me. this struggle is going to end in a blessing. I'm going to end, and I'm going to be able to be more expansive and to be more bring more blessing into the world. And so he asked the angel to bless him, and the blessing is that your name will become Israel, that you represent Jacob for the future, for the people that come from you. We are the Bnei Israel, we are the children of Israel, because we're children who inherit that capacity to struggle and to prevail. And we might not know what the end goal is, but the journey is our part to play. And each one of us, which Jacob shows us when he sheds that I'm not Esau, I'm Jacob, and I have my job to play in this world, and I'm shalom, I'm shalem, I'm good with this, I have everything I need. I, Jacob, have everything I need. I think that's for us also to say, I have everything I need. And I don't need to be this other person or my next door neighbor or my whoever I see on the Instagrams. I don't need to be that person. I don't want to be that person. I'm good with who I am and what I bring into the world and what my strengths are and what my relationship is with God. And that's where I want to end, that when Jacob struggles with the angel, when he struggles with God, when he struggles with evil, when he struggles with himself, he comes and he has his own personal relationship with God. And I think that's also something that we enjoying to have. We can look into our sources, we can learn Torah all day, we can learn the wisdom of the world, but do we have a relationship with God? Say there's no atheist in a foxhole. Well, Jacob is in a foxhole. He perceived that Esau was coming with an army to kill him, or that he would be forced to kill, and he was afraid, and he was alone, and he was scared, and he grappled with God in his own way. He wasn't the God of Abraham, and it wasn't the God of Isaac. Now we have the God of Jacob. He's forged and found by getting in touch with himself, his own relationship with God. And I think that's also what we are asked to do. We are asked to forge our own relationship with God and to bring that into the world, to be the light in the dark. And what happens in this week's Torah portion when Jacob is struggling with this man / angel / his own inner negativities, that the dawn breaks and there's light that comes in. It's the end of the night, and that could represent the passage of time throughout the generations, that we're going to end up with a redemptive energy at the end of days, that's when the sun will shine. But there's a light that comes into the world at the end of this darkness. We're still living in darkness, but each one of us, as we enter into the season of Hanukkah, can bring that light out into the world. And that's what we're enjoying to do. But we're going to do it in our own way. We're going to get in touch with us in the quiet, in the aloneness, in the solitude, when the noise is all pushed aside and we're alone with ourselves and with God, and we're going to struggle, and we're going to come out, please God, with a stronger relationship with ourselves, a stronger relationship with God, our own personal God, and our stronger relationship with what it is that we're here in the world to do.